adults are predictable. They expect you to behave as though what you do today is going to have an effect on where you'll be in 30 years. I mean, it's ridiculous to think that there's going to be anything in 30 years. I don't know what's worse, you know? Being blown up in a nuclear war or having a 7-Eleven on every corner.
You want it to be just like you? Think maybe if I had your haircut, I could sell more policies? Or maybe if I had your mouth, I could close a deal every day?
Give him a break.
Giving them too many.
They love you, you know? Yeah, they don't know what to think of me. Maybe I am as bad as they say.
Who says?
Everyone.
You're different.
They're living under this illusion that life as we know it is going to continue forever.
I'm in trouble.
You got a B+ in calculus?
It's just murder. It was an accident.
They killed my brother.
You're not listening to me.
No, you're the one who's not listening.
It was a suicide.
They killed my brother.
No one knows anything except a kid on a skateboard.
It happened right here. I'm not lying.
You gotta hear what it sounds like from where I'm standing.
Everybody knows that you're blaming yourself for the way that he died, but I just want you to know that your friends, they still think about you.
Somebody had to shake their tree. You said so yourself.
Oh, yeah. By the rules.
You got your team, I got mine. I guess we all do unexpected things sometimes, don't we?
Gleaming the Cube.
Welcome to They Called Us a Movie, testing the strength of friendships one terrible movie at a time. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and other podcast services by searching They Called Us a Movie. We are part of the Main Damie Network. To find more from us, check out the website at themaindamie.com or on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Main Damie. We are also now a proud member of Geek Vibes Nation. You can find them at gvnation.com. Welcome back to They Called Us a Movie. This is Anthony Del Vecchio, and with me as always is Dan Aquino and Mark Meyer. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hey, everyone.
No bit this week, just a PSA. Skateboarding is not a crime.
There you go.
Right on, man.
We could all get behind that. Yeah, this week is my pick. But before we get into my pick, we're going to talk about what we watched this week. So I believe Mark was going to go first. So Mark, what did you watch this week?
Yeah, so I had mentioned it last week as I was watching a supermarket sweep on Netflix that I had saw that the Floor is Lava was a new game show out there, and I'd heard some things about it. So I checked out a couple episodes this week. It is about as dumb as you think a game called Floor is Lava would be. The best part about it is it's so earnest in the part where it doesn't fully take itself seriously, which is what I think I like about it. Like when the contestants fall into the lava, it's obviously scripted for the people to act like it's like the end of the world. And you can tell they probably pause production while they swim the person out because it's like all these different cuts of people going, no, why no? You know, like, we'll revenge you and stuff like that. And also it's got that thing that really sometimes good game shows that I like have where you yell at the television like involuntarily because of something they do.
Okay.
You know, it's like, why are you going back?
Like Legend of the Hidden Temple.
Yeah. It's like, it's not that way, wait too. So it has that effect. Like I did that involuntarily on in the first episode when someone just backtracked. I was like, what are you doing? You're wasting time. I just
like, you dumb piece of shit as you're sitting on your, like, a Barca lounger.
Yeah. It was pretty funny. I was like, that's when I was like, okay, I think if I had more time to binge, you know, I would probably have watched this whole season. So I watched that. And then the second movie I watched is just, you know, random thing in my house. You know, every so often Turner Classic Movies is on. So I just got done cooking dinner and went in to see what my grandmom had on. And it had just started to be one of my top 10 movies of all time. Some Like It Hot was on there. So I sat and watched that whole thing because I can watch that movie every time it's on. I've praised it in previous podcasts as it has, you know, one of my favorite end lines to any movie ever. Sure. So, you know, I sat and watched that when I probably should have been upstairs writing, you know, in my office writing things for Stranger Damies. So Hopefully hopefully the next session doesn't suck. No. So that's what I watched. I got a couple things that people have been yammering at me to watch, and I don't know if I will. Have you checked out Warrior Nun yet?
No, I have not.
No. Okay.
Is that on Netflix?
I heard a couple people tell me that was good, and they compared it to Buffy, which got my ears perked up immediately. The other thing was The Old Guard or something that just came out.
Oh, the Charlize Theron movie.
Yeah.
I've not
So
seen that either.
yeah. So maybe I'll check those out, and it'll be on a future episode here. But yeah, that's about it. I actually am glad that I had things to talk about.
Okay, Dan, what about you? What have you watched this week?
I mixed it up a little bit. I watched a couple movies and a series. I rewatched The Boys on Amazon Prime, kind of gearing up for the second season. Okay. And I feel like Carl Urban is so underrated, man. Maybe that's not the right word, but he doesn't get his dues. I'll say that. Okay. I'm a big fan of Carl Urban. I wish Dredd had done better at the box office so we could have gotten another Dredd movie because he was awesome in that. I watched that. I watched Terminator Dark Fate, which wasn't terrible. It's probably the next best Terminator movie after T2. I know that's not saying a lot because everything after T2 is hot garbage.
Okay. Are you saying it's the best movie since T2, like chronologically? Or are you saying it's the second best Terminator movie?
It's the next best one after Terminator 2. So I would say
third best.
Third best. Yeah, I would say T2, Terminator, Dark Fate.
Okay.
I guess chronologically it would be the right way to say it, right, Ant?
Yeah. I wasn't sure if you were saying that it was better than the original.
No, it's definitely not.
Okay.
It definitely has the old tropes with Arnold and Sarah Connor, but it was good to see her back. She kicks all sorts of ass. If they plan on doing another Terminator, I really want them to do something totally different with it, because just sending a Terminator back to kill someone it's done to death at this point. They need to come up with something new with a Terminator. Like a Terminator could come back and do anything. But yeah, I didn't hate it. I thought it was actually decent. And last night I watched Jumanji: The Next Level. It was fine. It was a decent watch. It was a good way to pass the time. I actually enjoyed the first one, Welcome to the Jungle.
Yeah, I heard that was a surprise.
Yeah, that was actually pretty good. This one was okay. I would give it a 3 out of 5, I would say. But okay. I would say Welcome to the Jungle was probably 4 out of 5. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah, sounds like you got some variety in there. So I watched the new Hulu film Palm Springs, which came out this week. Which Andy Samberg and the mom from How I Met Your Mother. Really good. It plays on that Groundhog's Day kind of idea about replaying the same day over and over again. Something light for this kind of COVID, but also it does it well. It's a pretty good romantic comedy too at the same time. Really enjoyed it. A Lonely Island production, so some famous faces show up there too.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it, but I've heard Pop Star is really underrated.
I don't get Pop Star, to be honest with you. I like The Lonely Island. I've seen it. I like The Lonely Island and most everything that they do. I don't get Pop Star, to be honest with you. But this is also coming from somebody that loves hot rods, so as we said last week, I'm all over the place.
It's weird because I've seen people put Pop Star amongst the same movies as Spinal Tap as just like a great music parody, I guess, or band parody.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious about it, but at the same time, I like Andy Samberg, but I'm not like a huge fan of him.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to think really. I guess I would just have to check it out.
Yeah, maybe I need to rewatch it. Hot Rod didn't hit for me the first time I saw it, so maybe it deserves a second watch. I've heard plenty of people saying it's like one of the best comedies of the past 10 years or so. But yeah, it was one that kind of fell flat for me. But Palm Springs is really good. I suggest it if you guys have Hulu. If you don't, then I guess you're shit out of luck. I also watched The Lodge, which was a horror movie that came out last year. It was good. It definitely feels like Hereditary. I think I said on Twitter that it was like 2019's Hereditary. Not nearly as good. I'm not going to even say that. But definitely in that I want to feel miserable sort of way. Then you watch The Lodge. But it was really well done. And if you're a fan of horror, then check that one out too. That's on Hulu as well. And then I went into a really long string of, I got into a documentary kick of specifically video game documentaries.
Oh.
So I watched Nintendo Quest, which is a story of a guy who I think is just a huge NES fan. He seems kind of like introverted and stuff like that, and his friends kind of, to try and break him out of some sort of shell and to get him out more, they kind of give him a challenge that they're going to give him 30 days to buy every single North American NES release. So he has to start at 0 and buy all of them, because he already had probably 300-400 already. So he had to buy them all over again, which was it was like super mindless kind of thing that I threw on late at night, which was very, very entertaining and fun to kind of watch him pull down a whole bunch of games that, I recognize, and him trying to get to the expensive ones and all that. So like the world champion, the Nintendo Championship one didn't count because that wasn't a release. It was like a sweepstakes or whatever. It was never sold, so that was their stipulation. It had to be sold in North America. So it wound up being something like 675 games or so. Wow. Something like that.
I think the official number is low 700s for
yeah,
playable North American NES games, and a lot of them are giveaways. Or did they count the? I guess they would have to get to that number. The Tegan game or Tegan game.
I believe
the
so.
One
Yeah.
In the black cartridges.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So I watched that, and then I watched The Power of Glove, which was the story of the Power Glove. Again, another really light. It's probably 70 minutes long. It was a fun one. Just kind of the history of the Power Glove and how it failed and how the wizard failed and all that stuff. And then I did a rewatch of a movie called Atari Game Over, which tells the story of E.T., the Atari game, and how that was forever linked to the video game crash of the early 80s, and it's also kind of coinciding with them digging up the landfill in New Mexico, which was interesting and kind of sad too, because the E.T. basically ended the career of the game developer, the guy that built it single-handedly, and he seemed like he was on kind of a meteoric rise through early video games in terms of, I think he had 3 absolute smashes under his belt, and then they kind of gave him an impossible task to finish a game in 5 weeks, and he went and did it, and just kind of coincided with Atari just losing money hand over fist and blaming E.T., and then he kind of wound up being the scapegoat. And it was kind of sad to see someone he was probably 24 at the time, just completely getting kicked out of an industry like that. So that one was interesting. And then I just rewatched Raiders of the Lost Ark one night. So, and that obviously.
Yeah, did you recognize anything in that's from a certain other podcast we do?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. Was it the part where Karen Allen basically says that she was underage when they had sex? Because there is some choice dialogue where it's ooh, that did not age well. And then, that was my week.
I was gonna say happy
America?
birthday. Harrison Ford.
Yeah, there you go, Harrison Ford. Yeah, sort of almost the same day that I watched it. I don't think I watched it the day before. And then just in between that, I've just been going back and watching old wrestling pay-per-views.
I was wondering if you were gonna talk about that.
Yeah, not to keep this too long in the tooth. So Mark has been gracious to give me his WWE password. Shh, don't tell anybody. So I've been going back. I used to watch wrestling, and I'm realizing it was a very short period of time where I watched wrestling, enough for maybe 3 WrestleManias, and that was about it. So now I'm kind of going past into the later 90s of after I stopped watching, and there's some good stuff, some terrible stuff. But yeah, it's fun to watch that kind of stuff now, looking back on all of that stuff. I was a stupid 9-year-old or 8-year-old whenever I was watching it, because it's so obvious that it's all staged and all fake. But it's fun to watch Stone Cold pop up, and then The Rock, who also one pay-per-view it's oh, here's a rookie Rocky Maivia, and then all of a sudden the next pay-per-view he's got the Intercontinental Championship around his waist. Oh wow, that was quick. And that's all I watched this week. But this week was my week, and I picked a Generation X classic, if that's what we want to call it.
Yeah.
And it's a cult classic, and I've heard a lot about it, and I don't get it. But the movie we watched was 1989's Gleaming the Cube. So, guys, where are you coming from with Gleaming the Cube?
You took the words right out of my mouth. I don't get this movie. I don't know who was this movie made for. Was there a group of kids in the late 80s, early 90s who went around solving crimes on skateboards? Was that a thing?
Must have been.
Yeah. I missed out on that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I would have been great.
If this is the actual Gen X cult classic, I think it does a disservice to Airborne, which should be the Gen X cult classic extreme sports movie.
What about Rad?
I was going to say, what about Rad? Because
Rad's pretty
I've
good.
heard Rad a bunch of times.
Yeah, but Rad doesn't have the devil's backbone. So.
But I mean, this is definitely talked about in that sort of
Yeah,
era. I mean, even going beyond extreme sports, Pump Up the Volume, Singles, Reality Bites, all of those.
Yeah.
This is a little different than Reality Bites, but it's also 6 or 7 years removed, so it's kind of same generation as they grow up. But yeah, when I picked this movie and then I watched the trailer, I wouldn't have guessed that it was a movie about teens foiling an arms deal to Vietnam.
Yeah, of all places. Get that hot topic in 1989.
Right.
Well, I was trying to think of why they created that and why this movie has become such a cult classic. And the only thing I could kind of like glean from it is like the Vietnam War was their parents' war, really, or just slightly later than their parents. But like, so they foil something where they're aiding, I'm assuming, because we never really hear, but I'm assuming because the Vietnam Anti-Communist Relief Fund is the ones sending these ammunitions across to Vietnam. I'm assuming it's like, our parents fought this war that, anti-communism is such bullshit, but so we're sticking it to the man who's trying to stop communism and just killing innocent people. And that's our Gen X attitude about it, because we're all going to die in a nuclear war anyway in less than 30 years, man. That's all I can get at.
That was a weird topic. And they bring it up very casually. Like, what if you don't die in nuclear war? Whatever. We'll figure it out. What? How do you jump from that?
Yeah.
Very, very nihilistic. I didn't understand what the point of it was, and I was very surprised by this movie because it starts out like your typical movie that runs in the same vein like Rad, and kids are skateboarding, blah blah blah, and then it takes a dark turn pretty quickly, and it caught my attention for sure, but I don't know how to describe it.
I wish it wasted its time doing something completely different. That's really what.
Right. I wish it had stayed along the same vein as just kids on skateboards. And if they were going to solve.
Adult.
Right.
That's really all I wanted.
If you were going to solve something, it should have been like who robbed the local store or whatever, not stopping an arms deal or, raising money to save the community, whatever, it's like the old folks home or some shit.
Or like entering a skateboard competition, and then there's a bad group of skateboarders. Someone messed with Jimmy's trucks on his skateboard. We got to figure out who did that and expose them. Something like that, right?
Yeah,
that's the movie I was hoping that we were getting into.
Right, and I would have been perfectly fine with that. I don't want to see espionage in this type of movie. There's way too much talking in this movie. But I will say what this movie has going for it over such classics as Rad is martial arts.
Yeah, that come out of nowhere?
Yep. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of angst in this movie, too.
Yes.
There's a lot of angst worthy of Zack Snyder himself.
I would imagine a lot of it, with being a cult classic, has to do with having Christian Slater in it. Because I'm just looking at his IMDb, and just the amount of movies that he's in that you could call cult classics is like amazing. Like he's in one of his first ones is he's in The Legend of Billie Jean, which I've heard about but never seen, talked about. And then it's Heathers is right after this.
Sure. This is like right in his heyday.
Yeah. Yeah, then Pump Up the Volume, True Romance, and you're sort of just building up. He does a lot of these weird movies in between, but then he pops up these movies that you just hear people talk about, and just like this, you either get or don't get while watching it. He was one of those stars from back then that seemed to either have an eclectic agent or he got to pick his own role back then.
I'm sure we don't even realize how big of a star he was at one point because we were too young.
For the longest time, and I'm sure this will come up again, I kept confusing Christian Slater with Corey Feldman.
Ooh.
Okay.
I don't know why. I guess it's like the bleach blonde hair look. I don't know.
I don't even think Corey Feldman has ever sported bleach blonde hair.
Well,
he has blonde hair, doesn't he?
Corey Haim.
Oh,
Get
maybe
your
that's
Corys mixed up?
I'm confusing my Coreys and my Christian Slaters.
Man, a threefer. Gleaming the Cube is directed by Graham Clifford, who's an Australian director, did mostly TV stuff, nothing you really would have ever heard of, but he was the editor on a run of some pretty interesting movies, including Don't Look Now, The Rocky Horror Picture Show, The Man Who Fell to Earth, and The Postman Always Rings Twice. So movies with at least 6 words in the title.
Yeah.
This was written by Michael Tolkien, who also wrote Deep Impact and Changing Lanes. The stars Christian Slater, Stephen Bauer, Art Chudabala, Ed Lautner, Nicole Mercurio, Peter Kwong, Charles Cyphers, Max Perlich, Tony Hawk, and Christian Jacobs. Has an IMDb score of 6.3 and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 29%.
Yeah.
Budget $10 million. Box office 2.77. Not a good one, but also a very small budget. This was like a tax haven kind of thing. It was like, we have $10 million we got to spend by the end of this quarter. Let's throw this money at this guy.
I'm glad I looked up on IMDb the girlfriend in this, because I was watching, I'm like, I think I kind of recognize her, but I couldn't decide if I recognized her from either Karate Kid 2 or Big Trouble in Little China.
Big Trouble in Little China, right?
Yeah, it's Big Trouble in Little China. And I looked
she has like 3 credits.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was like. It's like one of those I'm looking at, like, I kind of recognize her. Like, it has to be in something I've seen a million times. It's like one of those things that I say in the past where it seems like somebody wrote 2 different movies and then they tried to make it one movie.
Yeah, I didn't feel that way in terms of the flow, but I could totally see that in terms of like, we have this arms deal sort of movie where people, some regular Joe uncovers it and it's going on in his backyard and he's got to uncover it, and then it's like, then I have this skateboarding movie because there's not enough skateboarding. That's really what I could say about this movie. I needed more skateboarding.
It's a lot of casual skateboarding.
Yeah.
Just kind of like getting from point A to point B and not doing sick, gnarly flips or grinds.
Yeah.
I mean, they're there, but you would want more from this kind of movie.
I do love that Christian Slater's character has his Gordon Bombay and Mighty Ducks 2 moment where he just goes to the place by himself to think and then just skates really hard.
I was thinking more of Flashdance, where she goes to an abandoned building and just dances.
That's probably
but,
better comparison.
Whatever your point of reference is, Mark. If you want to just stick to hockey movies, it's fine.
Yeah, yeah. The 2 movies they could have had was the arms deal espionage movie and then sort of a movie of, the Vietnamese culture, the anti-American thing going on with the girlfriend and Christian Slater's character could have been a whole movie on its own, like 2 cultures getting learned to like each other, sort of thing. That
Gung-Ho?
was beginning. Yeah, like that was a big thing in the 80s.
I just wanted more skateboarding. I wanted the whole thing to be about skateboarding.
And Tony Hawk's the best actor in this movie. Prove me wrong.
I mean, Stephen Bauer's pretty good. Plays Detective Lucero, but there's not many great actors in here.
Do you actually like skateboarding, Ant?
No. But I mean,
okay.
I was watching a movie about skateboarders, and I just needed that. I wanted more
cheated.
of it. Yeah. I didn't go to a skateboarding movie to hear about Mr. Wilhelm from Seinfeld trying to get weapons into Vietnam.
Yeah,
that was my bag, baby.
That's kind of like going to a Batman movie and you're just checking, like you're just following Alfred along as he's doing the chores around Wayne Manor.
I mean, it's not a bad movie. It's just not what the movie I wanted it to be. So I guess I really can't fault it for that.
It's kind of a boring movie if you think about it.
It is kind of boring, yeah.
Right? Because like I have it going on in the background right now.
Yeah.
There has been no action for the past 15 minutes. Just a lot of talking.
It's a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And Tony Hawk doesn't skateboard nearly enough in this movie.
Unless if he's the stunt double for Christian Slater's character.
He is not.
Okay.
But we'll get into that on who is.
Bam Margera.
Bam Margera.
He had two, basically. I'll just say it now. It's so when he's doing his kind of flash dance, skated out, that was Ronnie Mullins. And then the other actual skateboarding, Mike McGill. Mike McGill was his skateboarding stunt double.
Never heard of either of them. Were they big in the skateboarding community?
So Rodney Mullins was famous for his freestyle kind of tricks that he does, where it's just kind of like pogoing on it.
Okay.
And Mike McGill was big in the 80s.
Okay.
That was
so they are actual skateboarders.
Yeah, Ronnie Mullins was the only name I've heard before.
Yeah. I didn't know of Mike McGill before. Tony Hawk does do some skateboarding as his character, but he does not double as Christian Slater.
I was going to say, I was surprised that Tony Hawk has been around that long.
I think he's older than you expect him to be.
No, I think he's like 50 or something, right?
He is now, yeah. So he was... I was watching an interview that he did on his website or something with Christian Slater, like in 2012. And he said he was just out of high school, so he was about 18 in the time of this movie. So that timing would have worked out, just about 50.
Wow, pretty cool.
I mean, Tony Hawk Pro Skater came out 20 years ago, didn't it? Even more so probably at this point. Do you guys want to get into the plot?
Yeah, sure.
Dan, what do you got for us?
Oh, yeah. As I've been doing on the episodes every week, I like to give a shout out to our good friend Tia and her podcast, Top 10 with Tia. You could find her at Geek Vibes Nation. So Top 10 with Tia is a weekly podcast where Tia and her crew get together and they discuss top 10 lists. So, top 10 actors, directors, Marvel movies, so on and so forth. So go give her a shout out. She's a good person, and we get together with our hatred of Zack Snyder movies. So, I mean, if you like Zack Snyder, don't check her out, but I would check her out anyway. She's awesome.
Okay, and we're going to be right back. But before we get into the plot, we're going to take a step back and listen to some words from friends of the podcast. So we will be right back.
Hey everyone, this is Steve.
And this is Adam.
And we're part of the Hop Nation USA podcast,
Pittsburgh's #3 craft beer podcast.
Join us every Friday for new beer reviews.
We'll talk about the news, history, and homebrewing.
Plus, we'll sit down with the best brewers and industry personalities that'll have us.
So whether you're a casual drinker, a hazy boy hophead,
or even if you're a whale hunting cellar hoarder,
just search Hop Nation USA on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher and join the nation.
Oh hi, didn't see you there. It's me, George, from the best little horror house in Philly, the show where we talk about the best horror movie ever made, according to our guest at least. We've talked about groundbreaking classics like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Alien, but we've also got a lot of great ones coming up, including some very fun guests like Len Kabaczynski of Swamp Zombies and Red Letter Media fame, Caroline Williams, the star of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and Chase Williamson from John Dies at the End. So make sure you're subscribed to the best little horror house in Philly, and I'll see you boils and ghouls over there.
And welcome back. And now it's time to get into the plot for Gleaming the Cube. We open on John Wayne Airport in Orange County, California, as some skateboarders skateboard on the tarmac with some super radical music. We even have a theme song for this movie. It's Gleaming the Cube is the name of the song.
And they have that late 80s, early 90s thing with the fuchsia colored underlines going through to show you that it's radical, 80s. Man.
Unfortunately, they couldn't get Kenny Loggins for this movie.
That would have been good.
This was 100% a Kenny Loggins type of song.
Yeah. So the skateboarders are skateboarding on the tarmac, and then they hassle a pilot. Brian, played by Christian Slater, wants the pilot to pilot them in a plane, and he gives the guy some money, and the guy's like, I'll take you, but I'm not taking all these guys. And then we cut to immediately all of them in the plane. They all hop on the plane and adorn this inside with stickers. Go ahead.
Did anybody notice the Tony Hawk sticker?
They did, including a Tony Hawk sticker.
I think it's the first sticker, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
First smash, Tony Hawk sticker, boom. And then, so they're all on the plane, and one of the most impractical plans, they're searching for empty pools to skate, and they can only see them from the air. If this were a helicopter, it would make a little more sense, but you can't just land a private plane anywhere.
Right.
So I don't know what their plan was to get off the plane, but they
Right,
find
I was gonna say, what do they do? Like, they find one. What if it's like it's a 10-minute flight away? That's probably like what, half hour, 45 minutes of a skateboard, like skateboarding there, and you have to remember where it was. You can't see the street names.
Right.
So this is just a poor plan.
All around. I mean,
I think Brian has a map.
Brian's got a map, but still, it's like, all right, well, we're going back to John Wayne Airport. Hope you marked it down. It took us an hour to find it, and now.
Oh God! Imagine if it was an hour flight.
It
would take forever.
You gotta adhere to flight plans.
Oh
you know, you can't just hop on a plane.
No. Yeah, there are other planes in the air, you know.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see these kids just be able to skateboard through an airport, especially post 2001. Watching this movie.
It's definitely not the best plan, and it's not money well spent. He probably could have just, looked. Yeah. I mean, how hard is it to sneak into some like backyards and see if the pool is open or whatever? I'm not a skateboarder though, I guess, so I don't really know.
You don't know what it's like, man. All right.
I don't know what goes into finding an empty pool.
You don't.
But I guess that's a thing. I guess in California you come across empty pools all the time. I guess skateboarding wouldn't have been a thing, I guess, unless that wasn't a thing, right?
Also, people's wardrobes back then were really weird. You have like the typical punk skater look, but then you have a guy who wears like dress pants hiked up to his belly button. Like, was that the style for skateboarding back then?
I guess so. Nice pair of khakis.
Right. A button down. Like, that's not very hardcore, man.
Yeah.
I'm rebelling against culture, but my mom buys my clothes, so I have to do what I can.
Right. I make do. And there's a lot of Pizza Hut in this movie, isn't there?
Oh yeah. I think some Coca-Cola too.
Ah.
But they eventually find a empty pool, so they somehow get off the plane, and when I first started watching this, I thought they were just gonna like skateboard off the plane or something. I thought that was the original plan. That would have been radical.
That would have been very radical.
Just get us down low, bro.
Right.
Jump into the pool.
Yeah.
Or they're just hanging off.
So much easier if it was a helicopter, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It could have looked like they were being deployed.
Yeah, but no. So Tony Hawk then skateboards in the pool while everyone else watches him until one of those other kids takes a spill, and he scuffs up the pool with all his blood, and the paramedics and cops are called. The kid gets taken away in a stretcher, and Detective Lucero arrests Brian for trespassing. Also, the pool owner is the voice of Stu Pickles from Rugrats, by the way.
Oh, nice little tidbit there.
Yeah. Has nothing to do with this movie, but he was a actor, wound up in a lot of Mel Brooks movies as well.
I know he was the voice for Country Croc.
Yes. Yep. That's where I recognize his. Like, I heard him talking. I was like, ooh, I know that voice, Country Croc.
Yep.
So Brian's parents bring him home, and his dad is pissed because his dad is always pissed.
Yeah.
He meets his adopted brother Vin, who thinks his dad is too hard on Brian. Brian goes to his room, and Vin and him have a conversation. They also have a long-standing chess game, and then Vin's girlfriend shows up, Tina, and Vin leaves out the window. David barely acknowledges her. He just puts his headphones on and rolls over because he's angsty.
So much angst.
The next day at school, Brian acts like a dick and runs into Vin's girlfriend while on a skateboard, and Vin apparently does his homework for him, too. And then after school, Vin goes to work at a video store where his girlfriend Tina works, as her dad owns the place, and her dad really loves the Rams. That's what I got from this.
Go Rams!
That he's rocking the Rams hat, and he's got a Rams poster. It's just a lot of Rams stuff. So Vin is there. He's actually not working at the video store. He's doing some accounting work for the father, who runs the Vietnamese Anti-Communist Relief Fund. He comes across some discrepancies in some shipping numbers, weights specifically, and thinks someone is ripping off the relief fund. He thinks it has something to do with a shipping company, and Tina's dad waves him off and basically fires him right there, saying, I need someone more experienced if you're going to kind of follow down these rabbit holes and not do what you're supposed to be doing. So at home, Brian makes a giant sandwich, and his mom gives him some super cool skateboarding pads and a helmet when he goes into his room with his giant sandwich and finds Vin smoking, who's in a bad mood. And Brian gives him some nihilistic advice about not living for adults because eventually things are going to get blown up in a nuclear war.
I do like in this scene, I don't know if it's because of Christian Slater, but the part when he comes in and Vin's kind of angsty towards him with the cigarette and he goes, okay. And he's like, let's do this again. Get up, go and open the door.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts over, come back in. Hey, why so, just that whole thing. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I got to chuckle at it. And I don't know if it's just the way Christian Slater's acting ability just pulled that dumb idea off. That was, probably in the script. So it's one of my favorite scenes.
I was actually surprised that Christian Slater was happy that he got pads and a helmet. Right? Right? Because they always make it seem as if like only losers wear, pads and a helmet. Like, I don't need this, Mom. All the kids are going to make fun of me. And he was like, well, this is awesome. I'm like, oh, I guess this was made to be before we find out that this is like a crime mystery movie. I thought this was going to be like a PSA kind of movie. Like, not all skateboarders are punks, we can obey the law too,
Right. To that point, in that interview that I watched with Tony Hawk and Christian Slater, he said the one scene he hates is towards the end, is that he has like a reaction shot for when all the skateboarders come over the hill, and he was so upset because he has to wear that stupid helmet because he felt like he just made him look like super dorky.
In his defense, he did look super dorky.
He does. He really does.
So he's not wrong there.
It's not the most flattering helmet.
So then Vin realizes that, thinking it over, that he maybe have been onto something with WMS, the shipping company. So later that night, Vin goes to check out WMS headquarters, sneaks into the warehouse and finds an entire row of boxes dedicated to the Vietnamese Anti-Communist Relief Fund, VACRF to be specific. He tries to open one up, but someone turns on the lights and he has to hide. Mr. Wilhelm, George's boss from Seinfeld, catches him, and he pulls a gun on him and tells him to come with him, basically. At a motel,
he catches him off screen.
Yeah.
It was really confusing.
Yeah, we see Vin go to hide, and then we see him coming around the corner, but then he's like, I see you, and we don't know for a fact that he does.
Yeah, Vin basically goes, cops?
Right.
Yeah, police.
No, owner.
Yeah, just a strange series of events there.
Really micromanaging Mr. Wilhelm. Yeah. But I think his name is Lawndale, I think, in this movie.
Yeah, Lawndale.
Something like that. At a motel, Wilhelm and a goon start trying to pump him for info, thinking he's working for someone else. And then Tina's dad shows up, and Wilhelm goes to talk to him outside. When they both come back in, the goon has accidentally killed Vin. He's just kind of like had a heart attack or something like that. So they take like a rolled up T-shirt, they soak it, and they kind of like put it around his neck and kind of strangle him with it a little bit. But the goon says that he's done this plenty of times before, and this has never happened before. So then the next morning, the maid comes in to find Vin hanging by his belt in the bathroom. So they've staged a suicide for Vin. So the cops show up, and Lucero is the detective of the case, and the motel manager is super racist, mistaking Vin for Chinese. And then when Lucero corrects him, says they all look alike to him.
The wokest late 80s police detective, Lucero.
Yep. Lucero, played by Stephen Bauer, who you might know from Scarface. He plays Manny.
Yeah.
Where am I? So at school, Brian's dad shows up to tell Brian that Vin has committed suicide. Brian has a breakdown and then tries to de-stress by skating the half pipe. The skateboarding is done by Mike McGill. And they have a funeral for Vin, but Brian acts really antisocial, showing up on a skateboard halfway through it and places a chess piece on the casket.
I thought the parents were going to freak out.
Yeah.
Oh, how preposterous is this?
If they had a monocle, he'd drop it into the
coffin.
plot.
My word.
Never. Yeah, this whole chess thing never really comes into play as much as I think this movie wants it to.
So I think this moment would have hit harder if you would have known that Vin was playing the white side of the board, because he puts the white king,
right,
on the casket. Like he just puts it, chess. But if it's like he's like, oh man, that's his king, but they do nothing to make that moment as emotional as it, looking from the outside. Sort of like, I think they meant for that to be like a powerful moment, and it just falls flat.
Look, you can't have both. You can't have both a chess movie and a skateboarding movie. You got to pick one or the other.
Yeah, those two things are two totally different aspects of the sports spectrum.
Yeah,
they hate each other.
Cubes, the other you don't.
What if that's a chess move? I gleamed your cube.
Throwing away my chess skateboarding spy movie.
Right.
This movie beat you to it.
Damn it.
I like the idea of showing that Christian Slater's character is just, I guess he's deeper than what society makes him out to be. Like, oh my God, he plays chess. How can that be? But it would have been good to see, like, all right, we know that they play chess, but they don't really mention how often they do it or how many times so-and-so has won. You know what I mean? Like the brother just keeps winning, and I think it would have made a little bit more of an impact if it was like that was their final game after Christian Slater never got to beat him.
Yeah.
Because it is shown that they kind of resent. There's a little bit of a resentment between them, but not mean-spirited, I guess. I think it's just, Christian Slater's
rivalry.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a better way to put it. But yeah, I think it's a good way of showing, even though they didn't see eye to eye on things, they were brothers. Yeah. So I get it. That was cool. I just watched one of the silliest parts of this movie just right now, and it just totally undercuts what I'm trying to say because it's so ridiculously stupid.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see that there's like underlying points here, and this part just totally shits on it.
Yeah, this movie, or this whole chess thing, felt like it's like that thing I do in real life where I say like part of a thought, but I made the first half of it in my head and not realize the person I'm talking to didn't hear the first part. So, it has this whole, you're supposed to take everything Dan just said about this chess game, into that moment, but it's never been explained. But the writer was like, as he's writing the scene, is like, oh yeah, they play all the time. Yeah, people will get this.
Right.
And not realizing that he never said the first part of that sentence.
Sure.
I think Mark just wanted this movie to be an extra 45 minutes longer, and it's nothing but them playing chess.
Yeah.
It's them
gritty,
sitting.
A gritty chess match. That's what I wanted.
And them just kind of giving witty one-liners back and forth. Just how it's almost like Magneto and Professor X at the end of every X-Men movie when they play chess, and just like, oh, well, what are you gonna do if the world doesn't blow up in 30 years, Christian Slater? I don't know, but I'll figure it out. And it's just something real stupid.
Bishop to Queen 3. Got your rook, bitch.
Right. You should be wondering what I'm going to do in my next turn.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing that we do know. He loves chess, but he hates more than anything in the world is Frisbee. We'll get to that later. So at home, Brian finds the piece of paper Vin was writing those numbers down about the shipping containers. So then Brian goes to the Vietnamese part of town to try and get someone to translate the paper for him. But not before stopping by Pizza Hut and his buddy Tony Hawk, but it's just passing by. So he winds up at a pool hall, and some young dudes read over the paper and tell him that it looks like the paper is talking about drug supplies. So he takes the paper and skates off, and then the goon from the motel starts tailing him in his car, very aggressively, I might add.
Yeah, my one thought in this whole scene is, because you see later that he knows that Vin's girlfriend's, like he knows what video store they work at. I was like, why didn't he just go to that video store, to get it translated? Like, it just seemed random to just walk through the Vietnamese section of town and just walk up to everyone and go, can you translate this? Can you translate this?
Yeah, I don't know.
Rather than going to the one people you probably know.
I don't know. That's a good point. It's a fair point. But then Brian goes to the motel and talks with the maid that found Vin, and she tells him to get lost because he says it was his brother, and she's like, you're fooling me. Don't make jokes about that. because obviously one's Vietnamese and one's a white kid.
Yeah.
So then Brian spots the guy that's been following him, so he ducks out of view and loses the guy, only to hitch a ride behind a bus and follow the guy that's been following him. The old switcheroo. That might be what Gleaming the Cube means.
Right. It's another
The old
term
switcheroo.
for the switcheroo.
The old Gleaming the Cube.
Yeah, that would have been great if Christian Slater says that to the detective. How did you find this? I pulled the old Gleaming the Cube on the guy. Ooh, well played, Christian Slater. Well played. I'm just going to keep calling him Christian Slater, by the way, not his character's name.
So the guy stops to call someone on a payphone, and when he's not paying attention, Brian jumps into his back seat.
Now, was I the only one that thought that he was just going to slice his tires and then skateboard away?
That would have made more sense.
I wasn't expecting that.
Okay, that's what I thought he was going to slice the tires and then, maybe say a witty one-liner and the guy tried to drive away and then he'd skateboard,
Would he have said a chess thing?
Checkmate.
Right. Every one-liner should have just been a chess term.
We find out the guy that's been following his name is Win, meets up with Wilhelm and Tina's dad and tries to extort them. He says someone's been asking about what they've been doing, and then he'll tell them who it is, but he wants $50,000 and a plane ticket to Bangkok. And then he says, "Don't give me a jerk-off hand job."
Which is kind of redundant if you think about it.
Most certainly is. Yeah. That's what they call Gleaming the Cube.
I might incorporate that into my
sex
sayings.
Talk? Oh, okay.
I want when somebody's pissing me off, don't give me a jerk off hand job, man.
I feel like you
someone's
gotta
late on the rent.
Yeah, somebody's late on the rent. Don't give me a jerk off hand job, pay the rent.
And you would just be given a very confused look. But maybe something happens, Mark. Who's to say, really?
Yeah.
I wonder if that was just a bad take and that was the only one that they could use.
I really hope that was what was written. I really hope that was written on the page. Don't give me a jerk off hand job.
Well, what are the other options? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get too filthy here, so we'll just
we'll
let you figure it out, the listener.
So then there's a tussle, and Tina's dad kicks a gun out of Win's hand, and eventually Win is shot and killed. Then Wilhelm leaves. Tina's dad puts the body in his trunk and drives off, and then Brian runs away on foot. Later that night, Brian shows up at night with Lucero and some other cops back to the Grove where Win was killed, but nobody believes Brian. So Lucero puts him in his backseat to take him home, and then Brian tells Lucero that he didn't think that his brother killed himself and that he was looking into what his brother was up to when this guy started following him. So Lucero drops off Brian and then goes to the motel to check the registry. Say something, Mark?
No, I'm waiting for you to I thought you were getting to a point that I do want to jump in at. So.
Brian goes to his buddy Yabo's house, who apparently has a bunker for a bedroom, and Yabo's mom is played by Rita Rudner. And Yabo talks about Gleaming the Cube, which is still an unintelligible phrase even after Yabo explains it.
What is it exactly?
So, using the
Urban Dictionary.
No, Urban Dictionary does have it, but I refer to the great wise Dragonoid13 on YouTube, who put it this way: Gleaming the Cube is pushing yourself to the raddest and best limit possible. Everyone else is in the cube, but you go a bit bigger and can get outside the metaphorical cube everyone is in, and you can polish it, giving it a gleaming effect. So thank you, Dragonoid13. I'm taking this as gospel. That makes the most sense.
That's almost Zen-like.
Yeah.
If it wasn't just totally stupid sounding. What do they call it when you're surfing and you're in the tunnel? There's like a special term for it. I can't remember. But it's
so
along the lines.
Since I've been in the funnel, bro.
In the funnel. I know, man. You growing up in Hawaii and catching those gnarly waves.
Yep.
I haven't watched Point Break in a long time, so I can't tell.
There's got to be a Zen-like saying for surfboarding, because it's almost adjacent, right, at this point.
Via con Dios, that's all I could think of.
I don't know if that's what they do. I'm going to go via con Dios, those waves.
So Brian takes a phone book, which Yabo apparently has in his room, and starts looking up Robert Wynn in the area and then leaves. So he writes down a whole bunch of them, or he actually just rips out the page. So Brian starts going to visit the addresses of Robert Wynne's, and it's not as long as you think it would take for him. So he goes to 2 places and eventually finds the right Robert Wynne. And Lucero is already there. So Lucero is in Robert Wynne's apartment with Brian. He says that he's not sure that his brother didn't commit suicide, but he does know that his brother never registered at the motel. So then Lucero then calls Brian a screw up, and Brian is faced with the hard reality of a cab. And then Brian throws a hissy fit, but then sees a phone number written on a scratch pad and stealthily takes it.
Yeah, so, and this is the scene where Lucero starts doing that "I used to be you" sort of speech to Brian. And at this point, I'm like, is he going to skateboard by the end of the movie? Please tell me he's going to skateboard by the end of the movie.
Right.
I really wish he did.
Well, he realizes that his cop tactics aren't going to be the way to solve the case, and he has to go back to his roots, his teenage roots.
He
has to gleam the cube. Right, and then Christian Slater's character even says it. No way, he's gleaming the cube. It's never. I don't think it's ever brought up again.
And looks at the camera and winks.
Double
It'd be
guns
weird
at
to
the
see
camera.
Lucero on a skateboard, though. He's a pretty big dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't
which is
really
why
fit the
even
role.
more why I wanted it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like seeing Bobby Cannavale on a skateboard, right? Because it's very similar.
with that great accent, that Italian accent of his.
Yeah.
I'm gleaming the cube here. Watch out, punk.
He finds that number written on the scratch pad, so he takes it and then leaves. So he tries the number, and it winds up being the number to Bolsa Video, the video store Vin worked at and who Tina's dad owns. So Brian goes back to the police station and talks to Lucero about what he found. And Lucero says that Bobby Wynne supposedly landed in Bangkok that morning. Then Brian shows Lucero the note Vin wrote. And the other officer translates it and tells them that it's an inventory list of medical supplies. So then Lucero then tells Brian that he needs to forget about the whole situation, and then when they close the book on Vin's death, it's going to say that he committed suicide. And Brian has a hissy fit about that and says, I mean, yeah, if your brother was killed, then no, he's not getting justice. Yeah. I totally get the fact that you're throwing a hissy fit. So I'm not passing judgment on Brian is what I'm saying.
Yeah, he's totally in the right for most of this movie.
Yeah. So Brian can't accept this, so he does the only thing he knows how to do. He gleams the cube. By which I mean he finds an abandoned parking garage and skates around. Skating here done by Rodney Mullen. This is the point of my notes where I just say things that he does is called gleaming the cube.
Anytime he touches a skateboard, he's gleaming the cube.
So Brian goes to Vin's gravesite and talks to Vin and talks about what he's gotten himself into. Talks to him about how Vin was always one step ahead of him and how he can never seem to follow through with anything. So then Brian goes home and sees a picture of Tina and gets the idea of asking her to help him figure out what happened to Vin. He approaches Tina at school the next day and she tells him that he basically can't be seen with him because they're too different and he dresses like a slob. So then Brian goes home and gets rid of all his skate stuff, starts dressing like a preppy and cuts his frosted tips off. He shows off his new look to his mom and scares the shit out of her. Dad comes home and sees Brian and it's such a shock that he crashes into the garage.
He pulls a Danny Zuko at the end of Grease. Sandy. Yeah, that's I was gonna say he pulled a Sandy, but Sandy becomes the greaser at the end, right?
She gleams the cube.
Well, maybe. Maybe. We don't want to say that was a definite, but if you're in a flying car, I would assume something is getting gleamed.
So the kids at school are all very shocked too, so much so that someone calls 911 and Tina notices. And then that night, Brian shows up at Tina's house at night under the pretense that they're going on a date. After the movie, Brian asks a lot of questions to Tina about her dad's business, so she changes the subject to skateboarding and asks what he loves about it so much. He says he could do it on his own and he doesn't get judged by anyone, so she's confused as to why he would stop doing that, and he doesn't have an answer for it. So Brian goes home and catches his dad watching home movies of Brian's birthday, who was nothing but a shit in the video and who won't even play Frisbee without being an asshole. This is what's so sad about this scene is this is the most nostalgic video that his dad has of them. Is that Brian's being really shitty on his own birthday.
Yeah. You know, that's going to just come back and haunt him in the next 20 to 30 years, by the way. Because when his dad passes away, all he's going to remember is I wish I could have played Frisbee with my dad.
Yep. He hates it so much. This is so stupid.
I don't think I've ever seen someone react so negatively to Frisbee.
Yep.
It's such a harmless activity.
Won't even put out a hand to catch it. Just like avoids it.
Or when the dad dies, he's like, oh, thank God I don't have to play Frisbee.
Or he takes it the complete opposite way.
So at his funeral, he puts a Frisbee on his dad's casket.
Oh, thank God.
This asshole, all he ever wanted to do, he thought parenting was playing Frisbee.
That is, in the video, his dad sounds so excited to play Frisbee with his two sons, too. It's so heartbreaking. It's kind of heartbreaking. It's like,
yeah.
Like, his dad's kind of a shit throughout the whole movie, but this is like the one moment where he's vulnerable and like he's watching this video and it's the only one he could find of like his two sons together. It's just Brian being a complete ass.
Well, that's also kind of on the family. Like, although, to be fair, 89, obviously we didn't have the technology that we do now where you could take video at any point at any time. You know, obviously video capturing technology was very rare in the 80s. It wasn't as prevalent. But you got to take more videos than that, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. I mean, they were pretty well off, so I would assume that it wasn't like a money thing.
I wonder
like
if he
owning
just
a video camera.
I wonder if the dad stopped taking video after that, seeing that Brian is just a complete shithead.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right, well, I'm not taking any more videos of this. This sucks.
Yeah, he's like,
why do I want to remember this?
Yeah, when Vin was alive, he's like, well, I guess that's the one we'll have. And then he didn't realize.
And the fact that they used the two actual actors in it means that must have been a very recent birthday.
Yeah. It was probably that past birthday.
Yeah.
Man, I can't imagine. Like, I'm gonna get real for a second. That, you know, so my father passed away, and I can't imagine watching a video of me being a complete asshole to my dad. Like, oh my God, that's gonna crush me forever.
Yeah. So Brian tries. Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, and then, I don't know if you were getting to this, but then they have a reminiscing story where it shows that Brian was even a dick before Vin got adopted.
Yeah,
I bet he was.
Yeah, so Brian tries to initiate small talk with his dad. Brian's dad laments about how he has treated Brian, and Brian tells him that he shouldn't feel bad because he was always a problem kid, even reminding him of the time that they got kicked out of Disneyland for peeing on Donald Duck. Then Brian goes to the pier and meets up with his skateboarding friends the next day, and they rag on him for his new clothes and his bike, and they tell him that we're still here for you, man, even though you gave up skateboarding, and we know that you're really worried about Vin and how he died and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so, I love the heart-to-heart from the skaters.
Yeah. He's real deep, man. He's like an onion. Got layers, that Yabo. So Brian shows up at a martial arts demonstration that Tina's dad is emceeing, and she is working. So he talks to her a bit about Vietnamese food for a bit, and then spots Mr. Lawndale, Mr. Wilhelm from Seinfeld, and she says that he runs WMS. And Brian then recognizes what WMS was written on Vin's note, so he decides to sneak into WMS warehouse to find some evidence.
Which, by the way, this is the least secure warehouse I've ever seen.
100%.
That two teenagers were able to break into it, like, weeks apart?
Yeah. And they just kind of walk through the door.
Yeah.
So at night, he decides to sneak into the WMS warehouse to find some evidence, comes across the VACRF aisle and uses his skateboard to open one of the crates, which happens to be full of weapons and ammunition. Then Lawndale, right? That's his name?
Yeah.
Mr. Lawndale, yeah, and Tina's dad have a meeting at lunch about the break-in. The scene is just for us, as we learn as they're using the VACRF to send the weapons to Vietnam. It's the only reason why the scene exists, to fully explain to us, the viewer, of what's exactly happening.
At this point in the movie, it becomes very dialogue heavy. I noticed. So you're not going to get a whole lot of gleaming.
No gleaming of cubes for a while. Brian and Tina get closer. They talk about what Brian wants to be when he gets older, and he's super cynical about everything. He says he wants to be a veterinarian, but they're just going to turn the cows into burgers anyway, so what does it matter?
That hits home with me.
It does. Yeah, I knew you'd like that. As soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, Dan's perking up about that one.
Oh yeah.
So Brian excuses himself to the bathroom and sneaks into Tina's dad's office to find some evidence on him, taking his prized Rams hat and a lighter. And Tina catches him.
I'm sorry. Imagine that being your prized possession, a hat.
He loves that hat. He takes it everywhere, except for wherever he was.
That's so sad. I hope I don't ever become that man.
Yeah. And I love the complete bullshit excuse he gives as to why he's in the room, and and she just completely buys it. Oh, sure, you're looking at that map of Vietnam.
Yeah. Like, I'm looking at this map trying to figure out where Vin came from. Why the fuck did you walk in the first place?
Yeah.
So then she tells him that her parents are home and he needs to go out the back because she never told them that he was going to be there. And then later that night, Brian sneaks out of his house. He siphons gas out of his dad's car and heads to the WMS warehouse. At the warehouse, Brian sneaks onto the ground, sets off some fireworks in an outside office trailer. When security guards go to investigate, he locks them inside and then pushes the trailer down a hill. He then uses the gas tank as a Molotov cocktail and pushes it into a propane tank, and it explodes. He then plants the ram's hat as a scene to make people think that it was Tina's dad. But what about the skateboard that he uses? That gets left behind too.
Well, I guess they assume that you think it gets burnt up in the fire.
Sure.
But
the metal trucks was like, oh, well, what's this? Oh, it looks like a small kind of axle from maybe a scooter or, a skateboard maybe.
Yeah.
You would think that they put it together.
And again, the worst security ever for a location.
Yeah. If you are running ammunition and guns in this warehouse, you would think that you would beef up security just a little bit.
Yeah, 2 guards.
So as the fire trucks put out the fire, Lawndale finds the hat and then goes to his car to call Tina's dad. Lawndale makes some threatening remarks to Tina's dad and hangs up. So Tina's dad tells her mom that Tina has to go to her uncle's house immediately. And then Lucero shows up at Brian's house, tells him that he knows it was Brian that started the fire, but can't prove it. Once again, skateboard. Lucero also tells Brian that now he's not listening to Brian and he was the only person that would. So good luck, Brian. Yeah. Later that night, someone tries to climb in through Brian's window and it winds up being Tina. And Tina tells Brian that her dad is in some kind of trouble and she's scared for him. And they sleep in separate beds. She sleeps in Vin's bed as
he's a gentleman.
Yeah. The next morning, Tina is getting ready to leave Brian's house, and as she goes to leave, she finds her dad's lighter. Brian initially lies, but
it's such a. Oh, I got it at an army store. Yep. It has his name engraved on it. Oh.
Yeah, he lies, but she doesn't believe him, so he tells her the truth. And then Tina shows up back at her parents' house. Her dad was worried because she never showed up at her uncle's. She asks him what happened to Vin. Her dad admits that Vin's death wasn't a suicide, but it was an accident, and it was only because he was helping Vietnam. He calls Lawndale to tell him that it was Brian that set the fire, and Lawndale wants Tina to kill Brian, but he refuses. On his way to school, Brian is followed by 3 guys on motorcycles. They tell him that Lawndale wants to talk to him. Brian tries to escape them by Gleaming the Cube, by which I mean skateboarding down hills really fast as they try to catch him on their motorcycles. Once again, skateboarding here is done by Mike McGill. Eventually, Brian and 2 of the motorcycle dudes crash in front of a police cruiser and they get brought into the station. Brian talks to Lucero, who tells Brian that the motorcycle dudes were following him because he called them several derogatory names. Lucero tries to get Brian to admit he started the fire, but he won't say anything. Eventually, his parents come to pick him up while Lucero has to interrogate the motorcycle dudes. His dad's super pissed, but as far as we know, Brian only got run down by some motorcycle dudes. As far as he knows, Brian only got run down by some motorcycle dudes. So he's pretty pissed for no reason. Brian sneaks out and then goes to Yabo to try and get a new deck made. Meanwhile, the cops are about to get info from the 2 motorcycle dudes by accident. They name Lawndale while speaking Vietnamese together, but the Vietnamese-speaking detective is in the room so he can confirm what they said.
That classic cop movie.
Mm-hmm. So Yabo finishes the new deck while Lucero goes to Brian's house to find that Brian snuck out at night. First of all, this new deck is pretty fucking sick, I gotta say.
One thing I'm going to go back quickly on to the detective thing. I just realized thinking about it that there must be a word for Lawndale or else like a Vietnamese word for it, or else they would have said Lawndale while speaking Vietnamese.
I was thinking that while I watched it. I was like, oh well. Wouldn't they if they literally said Lawndale, wouldn't they have just when we've heard it? So Lucero sees the lighter in Brian's room, so I guess this means he knows exactly where Brian's going to be, because I guess he's got its name on it. So Yabo gets on the horn and tells all the skateboarding bros to meet up at the Pizza Hut truck. Meanwhile, Brian proceeds to gleam the cube. In this case, it means he's going to sneak into Tina's parents' backyard. He sees through the window of Tina's dad's office that Lawndale is there, and Tina's dad tells Lawndale that he's not killing anyone, and Tina knows, so is Lawndale going to kill her too? At that exact moment, Tina walks in, and Lawndale grabs her and holds her at gunpoint. You gonna say something, Mark?
Yeah, I was going to say that I love the fact that Tony Hawk's character has 4 telephones in his room. For some reason, it just made me chuckle. Like,
it's to answer sponsorship calls.
Yes. Yeah, it's
a big deal.
I'm surprised one of them wasn't like a branded Pizza Hut phone.
Yeah, that's his work phone. So she's held at gunpoint. Her dad struggles with the gun, and Brian. This might be the stupid point. Brian jumps with his skateboard through the giant plate glass window and isn't immediately cut to ribbons. The gun goes off. At this moment, Lucero shows up at the house just as Lawndale is exiting through the back. He goes through the house while Lawndale takes Tina and her brother. I think she takes them both hostage because someone's driving. I think it's
his driver.
Oh, it's his driver. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it was just like he was coming up the lawn. I was like, well, does he live there?
Yeah, because I think he looks back at the car like sort of like he was probably coming to get Lawndale, saying, "Hey, we're blocked in."
Yeah. Okay.
Sorta.
Yeah, I overlooked that. I couldn't figure out who that was. So he takes his driver hostage and police cruiser, and they take Lucero's police cruiser, which for some reason Lucero has left the keys in the ignition. That's what a responsible cop would do. I also want to just like not gloss over Brian jumping his skateboard into the giant plate glass window.
Yeah.
It was a very ridiculous scene.
We're getting to the most ridiculous scene, I think, in my opinion.
Maybe. If it involves a chase, then yes.
Yes, yeah, it definitely does.
So Lawndale forces his driver to drive while he puts Tina in the back, and they drive away. Tina's mom screams over her dad's dead body, and there's little evidence that anyone helps her. It's just kind of glossed over that this man is dead in his office. Lucero then jumps into Lawndale's car, and Brian helps him by breaking a fancy burglar alarm system, and they drive off. Which I don't know why Lawndale. I guess because his car is blocked by the police car. Is that the reasoning behind them stealing the police car?
Yeah, they just took the police car because that was, it was easier to get out.
Sure.
And because Lucero's an idiot and keeps keys in his car. Okay.
Yeah.
And then that shows that it's something he does all the time because when he immediately gets in Lawndale's car, he looks for the key in the ignition.
Everyone's as dumb as I am. So Brian and Lucero are in pursuit as Lawndale gets stuck in traffic. Lucero calls for backup, and Brian gleams the cube, by which I mean he calls Pizza Hut and calls his skateboarding friends to meet up with him. Eventually,
Pizza Hut gleams a lot of cube.
That's what gleaming the cube means. It means calling Pizza Hut and calls your skateboarding friends to meet up with you.
What would happen if we called Pizza Hut now and asked to gleam the cube? Do you think they would hang up on us, or would we get like
the cube, Pizza Hut?
Would they get like would we get a secret pizza or like half off the pizza?
I hope.
It just reminds me of the last time you ate a full Pizza Hut pizza on your own. You gleam the cube. That's what it is.
That's what. Yeah, eating a full.
If you eat an entire Pizza Hut pizza by yourself, you've gleamed the cube.
I will say it wasn't a large. It was only like a medium.
That's a lot of cheese, though.
Was yeah.
We can't do that anymore,
right?
Dan. Oh, God, not at this age, Mark.
No, I think I'd die probably. My gallbladder would grow back just so it could like
burst out again.
So it could kill you again.
Yeah. So eventually they track Lawndale to a parking lot where he gives them the slip somehow because he's the only police cruiser in the area, but somehow they can't see him. But then the chase picks back up. Lawndale causes an accident, which blocks the road for Lucero and Brian. Brian gets out and proceeds on his skateboard, including through the LA River for a short amount of time. And then there's a game of chicken between the police cruiser and Tony Hawk and the Pizza Hut truck and a whole bunch of skaters.
It's such a great shot. I love that shot.
It's so ridiculous. It's like we have Tony Hawk here, like probably even at that time, like the greatest skateboarder, and he's driving the Pizza Hut truck.
just that close up.
Yeah.
Of Tony Hawk is great.
Like the dead stare. Like he just like had no idea what he was supposed to be doing. And then all the skateboarders then chase after the police cruiser. They'll hop into the back of the Pizza Hut truck and are off. So Lawndale then forces his driver to drive onto the interstate and winds up hitting a Corvette. Brian tells the guy in the Corvette that wasn't a cop and he should go after him. And the guy's like, yeah, I should. So he does. And then he realizes halfway through his chase that Brian has hitched a ride on the back of his car, but he doesn't really mind. Classic gleaming of cubes right here.
Yeah, and Brian just becomes his hype man in the back.
You got it.
You got it. He's over there. Get him.
Yeah. Yeah, that guy was really just yeah, whatever you say, kid on a skateboard. I'm just gonna listen to everything you have to say.
Yeah. I'll get my make it better moment out of the way. That guy should have been moved for the rig now.
Okay. Lucero is on his own pursuit with the police cruiser out in front of him. Eventually, he catches up with Lawndale and Brian in the Corvette. And then eventually, the Pizza Hut truck catches up with everybody, and Brian pushes off the Corvette under a semi-truck and hitches a ride on the Pizza Hut truck.
Best scene in the movie.
Then Lawndale's driver can't drive worth a damn. Eventually, he crashes the car on the interstate, and Lucero gets out and gets into a gunfight with Lawndale, who is still holding Tina hostage. Then the Pizza Hut catches up, stops short, and Brian gleams the cube, by which I mean he gets launched into a perfectly placed quarter pipe, which sends him in the air, and he lands on Lawndale, knocking the gun out of his hand and foiling his plan. So Brian goes to the hospital, and Tina visits him there, and they totally gloss over the fact that her dad is now dead, and she just says that they might go back to Vietnam, but he tells her to stay. So then Brian goes to the cemetery with Lucero, where they have some playful banter before they drive off.
Yeah,
And then
I love the only acknowledgement of her dad dying is, so your dad? And they just look at each other silently.
Yeah.
Oh, it sucks. You know, it's like...
Damn, man.
Did you get to play Frisbee with him at least?
And then we get some extended skateboarding footage of Rodney Mullen in a terrible wig. And that's the end of the movie. That's Gleaming the Cube, guys. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's all over the place.
It's just so weird that was what this movie was about, was Vietnamese ammunition running.
Can I say that I got more into it as you were describing the plot going through? I was like, yeah, this movie ain't bad.
I didn't hate it. I would say that. Like, yeah. I wasn't bored by it. I mean, there's some boring parts. I'm not gonna say I wasn't bored by it at parts, but it was silly. Yeah.
This movie is 100% saved by Christian Slater. Like,
he's not bad in this.
Yeah, if you get a slightly less talented actor or even an actor with less charisma, it doesn't work. Like,
sure.
You can't watch character, for however long this movie is. Too short, in my opinion. No. Without that charisma, it takes the boring parts of the movie and make them even worse. Like, at least I'm there. Oh, I want to see, Christian Slater, what he does in this interaction. Sort of. Maybe back then people would have been more bored because they didn't really know him, yet. But yeah, it's not bad. I mean, if I wouldn't have searched out this movie for any reason, but now if it pops up for some reason on basic cable or anything, I won't turn it off until the first commercial break.
Okay. Yeah. What are your final thoughts on this, Dan?
I wish that it didn't try to overextend itself and become this whole, murder mystery, cop drama kind of thing with skateboarding mixed in. It really should have been Christian Slater's character and his skateboarding friends, maybe, if you want to lean into it, are, like teenage detectives or something like that, and they skateboard.
Yeah.
Almost like a Nancy Drew or Hardy Boys kind of thing.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I was going to make a Nancy Drew comment.
I think that would have made more sense.
Yeah, I think there's definitely there's that moment where they come over the hill with the Pizza Hut truck, which is super ridiculous, that Pizza Hut truck. But it's like you see all those skaters lined up, and it's like that's what the draw should be for this movie. It's just a bunch of skateboarders doing stuff together, even if that's solving mysteries or just hassling the man.
Right. Or what if you did like a Footloose kind of thing, right? Where, like dancing is outlawed and, here skateboarding is outlawed. And maybe Brian's dad is, the mayor or whatever, and they don't see eye to eye. So they're clashing over it. Like, when are you going to give up this rebellious attitude and stop your skateboarding? Never, Dad. That's my identity, dude. And it's just like, I guess he wins him over. I don't know how the hell you win someone over by skateboarding, but like maybe he enters a competition and he wins, and the dad sees how important it is to these kids that they're able to do this and, stay off the street and not be in gangs, I guess. I don't know, like you could throw a little PSA in there, but you could do it along those lines too, where it's the generational gap. We don't see eye to eye with these kids doing, skateboarding and acting out like that, but it's not harmful. It's just them expressing themselves.
Yeah, this could have been a perfect 80s vehicle to push Nancy Reagan's anti-drug campaign. These skateboarders take on drug dealers in their hometown. Not in Orange County. You get out of Orange County.
And Brian unironically wears a Dare t-shirt.
Yeah.
Right. Who was the mascot? Was it the lion? The Dare lion? Yeah, he just has doesn't he have like a picture of Elvis on his shirt at one point?
Yeah.
Yeah, what the hell is that?
Because he's counterculture, man. Elvis is counterculture.
Jesus.
He's freaking out the squares.
He's really bringing it to him. Yeah. I couldn't tell if it was Elvis or Prince. Like, well, I guess it would make more sense if it was Prince. So I'm going to go with that. Would. But yeah, that's
classic mistake.
Yeah. Well, listen, the shirt was crumpled, so Prince had the opulent hairdo. He looked fly AF. So I'm not saying that Elvis looked fly, but they had the coiffed hair kind of thing going. And I think I don't get what the overall message of this movie was, right? Is there a message here?
And the weird thing, when you think of the time period, right? Are we to assume that the weapon smuggling was helping the South Vietnam, fight the North, being anti-communist? Wouldn't they be technically the good guys in 1980s America?
I think that's what
the anti-communist.
I think in the beginning of this podcast, that's what I kind of was trying to glean from this. Of this is being completely anti-US's involvement in Vietnam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that was my thinking. I was like, I guess if you take that reading from it,
it's no accident, Mark.
Sense. Yeah.
No accident.
Yeah. Was this a way for America to to get a W over Vietnam? Like, oh, we stopped an illegal arms dealer, so take that, Vietnam. America win.
No, because he lands on a white guy.
Oh, that's true. But he was helping the Vietnam, right?
But he's an American, so once again, it's anti-America's involvement with Vietnam.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense then. Okay, well, we lose again, I guess. I don't know.
The good people win, but it's not who you think it is.
Right. It's weird seeing Christian Slater as a hero, I guess, but he was pretty big back in the 80s, obviously. I'm sure.
Yeah.
It wasn't his first heroic role.
Yeah.
But
and obviously this movie bombed.
Yeah, so it didn't help his stock, that's for sure.
Yeah. Have we already covered what we would do to make this better?
It sounds like we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I jokingly did the Lou Ferrigno joke.
That's the only thing you would change?
No,
it's a 10. Lou Ferrigno's in that Corvette.
It's a 10. If Lou Ferrigno's the guy in the Corvette, it's a 10. I'm telling you.
Well,
it's like Godfather Part 1,
Right. I'll just throw some Lou Ferrigno in there. I think it would have been fun to have Tony Hawk just come in at random parts of the movie, and it's basically just him passing by without anyone noticing him. Right, just like him, hey everybody, and just skate away.
And then just Tony drop a perfect 900 in the background.
Right, yeah, it would have been so great. And no one pays him any attention.
Yeah. Well, you guys got any final thoughts on this podcast?
I think there are definitely better, funnier movies to watch from of this genre out there. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't recommend this movie to anyone else, really. I think it doesn't get a passing grade from me.
Okay.
Yeah, unless the only reason I would recommend it to someone is if they have some kind of fandom for Christian Slater and just haven't found this.
Okay. Cool. All right. I guess that's gonna wrap it up. You guys want to plug your shit?
Yeah, absolutely. At Diaquino122 is my Twitter account. You could also follow our Real Play D&D account on Twitter and Instagram at Stranger Damies. Closing in on 900 followers. We're almost at 1,000. And I was talking about it on the stream on Sunday. Once we reach 1,000 followers, that'll be like my greatest accomplishment ever in life. So I'm eagerly awaiting that 1,000 follower. So yeah, if you want to talk about D&D, we talk movies, we talk games on there as well. We're multifaceted. So, come drop by, tell us you love us, tell us we suck, whatever. We just want to talk to you guys.
Yeah, and then we have our podcast, Stranger Damies. The D&D podcast airs every Wednesday. The episode airing right before this was the end of our end of a session. So you'll get to pick off with a nice cliffhanger, as I always like to do at the end of sessions. And our video game podcast, the Game Vault Pod, or Game Vault Podcast is probably the easier way to find it. Aired a new episode on Monday, and we have some fun talking about the news going forward. Ubisoft did their thing and stuff like that. So if you have any interest in video games, please check us out there. You can find them both of them on iTunes, Google Play. Basically search for Stranger Damies or the Game Vault Podcast, and you can just find them anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Okay, great. And we are They Call This a Movie. You can find us at theycallthisamovie.podbean.com on any podcast streaming app. Just look for They Call This a Movie, and we will pop right up. We are on social media at The Main Damie, because themaindamie.com is our main website. So go to themaindamie.com and you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at The Main Damie. And we are also proud member of Geek Vibes Nation. They are at gbnation.com and on all podcast streaming apps and on all social media apps. Just look for Geek Vibes Nation. They will pop right up. Bunch of great shows on there. I still haven't made that list that I keep saying every week. That if you like geek stuff, if you have interest, anything that has to do with pop culture, there's going to be a show for you on there somewhere. Check them out. We're there. A bunch of other great shows are there. Something for everyone to be had there. Our email address, if you want to drop us an email, themaindamie@gmail.com. You could send us some recommendations for movies to watch, or you could do that at Twitter too. We're very active there. I'm at Antelvec on Twitter. You can find me there. That's my personal. And I think that's going to wrap it up. I don't think I've forgotten anything. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up for Gleaming the Cube from 1989. I don't think we still don't have an understanding of what Gleaming the Cube means, but maybe next episode we'll figure it out.
Listen to your heart, whatever it is.
Yeah,
it's in there.
Yeah, it's the skateboarder's version of John. It can mean anything. So this movie was directed by Graham Clifford. So for Dan Aquino and Mark Myers, this is Anthony Delvecchio telling Graham Clifford, well, you certainly made a movie, didn't you?